My name's Carolina. This is Carolina's Closet, and today I will tell you with immense detail how to make these granny square crochet pants. Come on, let's do this. So, hello. Nice to meet you. I hope you stay with us. I hope you consider subscribing to this channel and liking this video, maybe commenting below anything you want throughout the video. If you have something comes up in your mind, comment it down below. I'll put my social media here just in case. But let's go on. Let's start this video because it's a very long one. So, a couple of years ago, crochet came back with full force, and I feel like it's still here. It's very much still here. The crochet girlies are doing it on Instagram and Pinterest, and I want to be one of them. I want to be a crochet girly. I feel like I can be considered a crochet girly now. I feel like I can. But I have been seeing these beautiful granny square crochet pants. I don't know if there's one specific creator that did this first. I will try to put here some people that did create these. But they became very, very popular, especially like around the quarantine, I feel like. Maybe, I don't know. But they were very popular. I've been wanting to make them for ages, like 2 years. But I haven't gotten around to it. I would have to like learn crochet and like make the pattern. And I just kind of was very lazy. But then in the beginning of this year, I was like, I will do these. I'll just do them. And I did. And yes, I did say in the beginning of this year, which does mean that I did take 6 months to make these. You might take longer or you might not. Don't leave. I will tell you everything about them, and then you can consider if the time is worth, like this project is worth your time. But like, just stick with it. Just stay with me, let's go through this. So yeah, the first thing that I did was obviously learn how to do granny square crochet, and I went to YouTube, typed in, and there were a bunch of results, and I just clicked the first one and I learned how to do a simple granny square crochet, the basic one. And I tried a few times to get better at it. I think I'm getting it. I think I'm Why do I do this wrong? What happened? So like really start doing it, and I learned, and then I was like, the world is my oyster. I can do these. I can create granny square crochet pants. And I did that. So I'll show you how to do that with intense detail. Now, you might be questioning, you might be like, bestie, you literally just learned how to do crochet. Who do you think you are teaching it to me like that? Well, I did just learn how to do crochet, but I do kind of know how to work with fiber art. I do knit a little bit in the knitting machine, and I kind of like creating patterns. So, I feel like I created a cohesive walkthrough on how to make these, so that if you're a complete beginner like I was, you'll be able to understand it. I feel like you can. Now, I will be very thorough, and I will talk about yarn choices, things like blocking that are not that necessary, as well as like the overall building. I will walk through how to make the pattern to fit yourself and how to adapt it. Maybe you don't want to use this specific square. You might want to use a specific square that you already have in mind. So I will walk through all of this in immense detail. If you're only looking for like a specific part, I encourage you to look in the summary that I will put on screen, and I will try to time the video in the down bar if you need only a specific something of this video. But I will walk you through every single thing starting now. So the first thing you need to know how to do is a granny square. I will talk you through how to make one very fast. But in case you want like a more detailed follow along real-time video, I put up one a couple of days ago on how to do this exact one that I did. Of course, you can use any color, but I did this one and I used a very tiny hook. I will be talking about that in just a few minutes, but I have a full like follow along, very detailed, very like real time. If you want to follow along and do that, or have a company while you crochet. I'm kind of annoying, but maybe you like me. But I will be doing this one in the video just so that you can have like a basic understanding of a granny square crochet. So first, you'll have to do something called a slip knot. That is a little knot that we do in crochet. Every single time I say slip knot, I want to put like a picture of the band. I don't listen to Slipknot. I actually don't know if I know a single song of them. I don't know if they're a problematic band or not. I just know that every single time I say Slipknot, I'm like, the band. But anyway, that's just to say that I want to put like a Slipknot photo every single time anyway, I'm so sorry. Slipknot, and then you chain 6 stitches. I chain 6 stitches because I use a very thin yarn. There are people who chain 4, people who chain 5. It depends on the tutorial you follow, but you just need to chain enough stitches so that you can create a little circle with those stitches. A chain stitch is when I'm putting the visual, so I hope you can understand what's happening. And then you will put your needle through the very first stitch that you did, the slip knot one, and then you grab the yarn on the other side, and then you pull it, and then you create a beautiful little circle that you're going to work around. And then after that, you create 3 chain stitches up, and you do 2 double crochets. A double crochet is when you yarn over, you put your hook through the little circle that you did, get the yarn on the other side, and then yarn over, and then pull through 2, and then pull through 2. And then you have a little side of your square, and then you create a corner. And to create a corner, you chain 3, and then you create 3 more double crochets. And then you do another corner, 3 more double crochets, another corner, 3 more double crochets, another corner. And then you have a mini square, and that's your base. And after that, you have to go up 3 chain stitches and do the same thing all over again. So double crochet, corner, double crochet, double crochet, double crochet. And then, we haven't done this before, you chain 1 to create a little gap. And then you do the same thing again. Double crochet, corner, double crochet, double crochet. Chain 1, double crochet, corner, double crochet, chain 1, double crochet, chain 3, corner, double crochet, chain 1, and then you finish by going through the first 3 chain stitches, and you pull the yarn through, and then you have a second row. I call them rows. I don't know if that's a crochet term. Just call every time you go around, or like in squared, I call it a row. And then you can change your colors if you want. You can change it at any single row. So you have to do a complete row in a color, and then you can change it if you want. If you want to make it colorful, most people I feel like to make these colorful. And to change your color, you will just finish the square. You will cut the yarn, and then you start with your next color. You do a slip knot in the next color, and then you grab the color, grab the yarn with the crochet hook through one of the corners, and then you just start doing everything that we just did with the next color. And it's just one more thing. Once we're in the third row, every single time we get to a gap, because once we start chaining one, we start creating little gaps in the sides of the square. Every single gap, you do 3 double crochets as well. So you will be starting in a corner, so you do 1 chain, 2 double crochets, another corner, 3 double crochets, chain 1, and then you do 3 double crochets in the gap, in the hook, the ball thing, in the gap. And then you chain 1, and then you do 3 double crochets, corner, 3 double crochets. And you keep going as long as you want. For this specific one, 1, 2, 3, 4, I had 4 rows, and it's a decent size. For my granny squares that I used to create my pants, I made 7 rows. And that's because I used a thin yarn. And I'll talk about that next, I think. And yeah, you just gotta continue doing that for as long as you want to create a square as big as you want. This is the basic. If you've never done a granny square crochet before, I advise doing a few first, and then, after you finish doing a few, you're going to get used to it, and it's just going to come as second nature. It's fine. You just get used to it. When you finish your squares, you will notice that there are some pieces of yarn hanging loose. We call them tails, or I call them tails. I'm not sure. I think people call them tails. You will want to take these off. You will want to do that because we don't want, stylistic you might, but usually we don't want tails hanging loose in your project, in your granny square pants. So you will want to take them off, right? There are a few ways to do that, and I'm just telling you here because this is a long feature film about granny square crochet pants. So the first way that you can take off your tails is you leave a long piece of yarn. When you change colors, you will have a new tail every time you change colors. The more times you change color, the more tails you have hanging loose. First, and I feel like most commonly done way to weave in your tails is to just finish your whole granny square crochet, and then you pick a tapestry needle, or in my case, normal needle, because I use such a thin yarn, and you weave them in. You can weave them in like this. You usually weave them in inside of the project. So you just pick them and you just weave them in a way that they're not really seen, and you cut the little ends. You can also do like a little knot. I wouldn't advise, but there are people who do that, just kind of create a knot and then just cut it. I like to weave them in because they just stay tucked in. So you can finish a crochet square and tuck all of the tails in, and that's good. Next, do the granny square crochet, tuck all the tails in. Next, no. You can do that in another way, that is finish everything. Do all of your granny square crochets, all of them, and then pick a day that you're just going to weave in the ends. That's a way that you can do it. I personally do not like that because that's such a mindless thing to do in a way that I just absolutely not do. I don't like. Personally, I just didn't like. I did that for a few of my squares, and I just absolutely do not like stopping, finishing everything and then having to weave in every single piece of yarn. But maybe you like that because you can just watch a series, watch TV, and just weave them in. The way that I like to weave in is I weave in as I go. So I leave a very tiny piece of tail so that I can catch it when I crochet. So I can just kind of weave them in as I crochet. And the pieces that are left loose when I finish a row, I will weave them in as I finish the row, so for the next row, for the next color, I will not need to deal with the tail because it's already weaved in. So every single color that I finish, I weave in, and then I go to the next one and I weave in, and I don't have to deal with weaving in later because I already weave everything in as I go. And I just like that. What you do not want to do, please don't do this, is finish everything. You finish all of your squares and you're like, I just need to build this. I just need to see my squares and my pants done. I will just build everything and then I will weave everything in because, you know, I'm going to have it done. Don't do that. Do not do that. Please don't do that. Finish your squares and weave them in, or weave them in as you go. Don't start building the pants before you have weaved everything in, because, you know, it's something to get a little square and weave everything in, and it's something else to grab like a big piece of heavy fabric that you created and then weave it in. Do not do that. Also be careful, weave them in, because otherwise your squares are going to start getting loose. So yeah, weave them. Weave your ends. And I'm sorry that this was such a long part of the video, but I feel very passionately about tails. Okay, I want to tell you some mass producing tips, because it doesn't matter how big your crochet squares are, or like in which way you decide to do this, you will have to create quite a large amount of granny square crochets because you want to cover the lower part of your whole body in them. So you're going to be creating quite a few. So what I found to be a better way to do this, to create the squares, is to go by color or by piece, so by row. So basically, all of my squares have either green or white middles. So I created all of the middle sections of my granny squares, and then I did all of the second color, and then I did all of the third color, and then in the end I did all of the brown color. So I was, you know, going by stages, by colors, and that's a way that I thought was very nice to work with, because I don't know, you just have you created already the number that you will need. I feel like it's encouraging, because if you're working like me and you're creating a very time-consuming kind of square, you will be disencouraged, I feel like, because it takes a while. It's a project that takes a while. So I don't know, if you already create a lot of middle beats, like little tiny little squares, and you just, you know, you just have them, you're going to be like, oh, I need to finish it. You know, it's encouraging. It's like, I already did this, let's continue. Let's not stop halfway, you know. So I find a better way to create everything is to go by colors. So create all of the middles, all of the second colors, all of the third colors, all of the fourth colors, as many colors as you're going to use. So I feel like that's a nice thing. Okay, so let's talk about the part that, for me, in my opinion, is the most important one, but it might not be for you. I don't know. I really like talking about yarn. You know. So let's talk yarn. Let's talk materials. You're going to make your little pants, and you want to know, which yarn do I choose? And I'm going to tell you. You might just use like the yarn you have left over, in which case you just use the yarn you have left over. But in case you're going out to buy some yarn, some matching yarn to do your pants, I will give you some options. First, ask yourself. Actually, I'm asking yourself. Let's make this interactive. Comment down below. Where do you want to wear these pants to? Like, do you have an event planned? Do you have like an idea, like an outfit idea to wear these pants to? Like, why are you making this? Like, where do you want to wear them to? Is it a summer outfit? Is it a winter outfit? Is it a spring outfit? What is the weather like? Where or like when you're wearing this? Do you have an event that you want to wear these to? Which, by the way, if you have an event that you want to wear these to and the event is in like a week, I'd recommend having a second option, because this might take longer than you expect. There were a couple of events that I wanted to wear these to, and I wasn't physically able to finish that fast. So, just food for thought. Anyway, I asked that because it's really important, and it should be like the kind of information that you think about before buying the yarn, or not, but like in theory it should, because the fact of the matter is these are heavy pants. They are long length pants made with knots. You're just knotting a piece of yarn over and over and over and over again, so they're going to be a little bit heavy. So the yarn that you choose makes a difference. It should make a difference. Now, what are your options? First, let's talk about fibers. What kind of fibers do you want to use? First, you have the natural fibers. Woohoo! You have cotton, linen, silk, wool. Personally, I wouldn't go for wool or silk just because they're very expensive for these. And like, they're kind of like a funky, quirky piece of outfit, piece of clothing that you're going to have in your wardrobe. I don't know if you're going to gravitate towards them a lot. I just feel like silk and wool are not, the most cost effective. Nor is linen. Usually linen is quite expensive too. It's going to be fancy if you choose to do it with linen or wool or silk. Also, wool and silk are animal fibers. That's, a personal thing. A lot of people don't like using animal fibers. That being said, wool is usually a temperature regulating fiber. So if you have a chance to find like a very thin wool yarn, it might look good and it might feel good, because like it won't usually, like it will be hot, but like in a temperature regulating kind of way. And silk will look very fancy, but like I don't think silk does really match with granny square crochet. From the natural fibers, I would go for cotton. It's actually what I used, so I'm a little bit biased. I'm actually very biased towards cotton. I just love cotton. Which is weird, a weird sentence. But I just have a lot of cotton yarn. Anyway, cotton is kind of genuinely a little bit of like a colder fiber. It's not too hot. It doesn't feel too hot when you make something out of it. And it's easier to find than all the other ones that I just talked about. It's a very common craft yarn usually, and you have a lot of color options. The next version of yarn that you can choose are synthetic fibers, so usually acrylics or anything that's like polyester based. So acrylics are usually way more cost effective. They're the cheapest ones usually you can buy, and they're usually very, very, very easy to find. They're the most commonly used craft yarn. Usually you're going to find a lot of colors for acrylics. And they're a little bit on the warmer side, so they're going to be warm because like acrylics are made to imitate wool, but they don't have the temperature regulating thing that the sheep do with their whole fur. So acrylics will be hot. They will make like a hotter piece of pants, piece of garment on your body. But they're very cost effective. They're much cheaper. And because you're going to be using quite a bit of yarn, it might be the only thing in your budget to use. Same with like any kind of polyester thing. It's probably usually more cheaper. Yeah. The thing though, there is the conversation about acrylics. Acrylics are the most unsustainable fiber out there just because they take the longest to decompose in out of any other fiber. But hey, listen, you're doing one, it's for yourself. You're probably going to use it a lot. If you have to use, or if you really want to, it's going to be warmer. If you want to use acrylics, do that. Don't let anyone shame you. Do your craft. I hope it looks beautiful. That being said, did I just scream? I'm so sorry. Yeah, so talking about like acrylic versus cotton, it's your choice. Usually cotton's going to be a little bit colder, a little bit cooler. It's not going to be like made to warm you up, and it's generally like a stiffer kind of yarn. So when you stitch, especially in the beginning, you're going to find a little bit more resistance. And the stitches are going to be very clear because it's a very compact, like compactly twisted yarn. So the stitches are going to look like very crisp. Whereas with acrylics, it's really hot, so it's going to create like a very warm piece of garment. And the fibers are more fluffy. So they're just like, they're easier, like it's more smooth to crochet. They're also like, you might be losing stitches faster, but you just pick them up because they're so soft to crochet. And that also affects when we talk about granny square crochets, because if you see the crochet, like the granny square, is usually, it has a lot of gaps because it's part of the thing. It has holes. And so when you make something with cotton, because it's so stiff and so like the holes are they're just there. They're very visible. They're very clean in terms of like, they're perfect holes. When you make them with acrylics, the holes are still there. They're still holes, but because of the way the fiber is woven, there's a little bit of like residue fiber thrown in there. So if you look at it closer, the holes, they're almost like filled with little bits of thread. So like the holes are like, they're going to be seen anyway, but here they look a little bit more soft. That's something that affects your creation. Also, still talking about yarn, there's a difference between thick and thin yarn, and that's very important as well as the kind of material you use, the thickness of it. The thinner the yarn, the thinner the fabric, so the less warm it will be, but the longest it will take. So if you use a thin yarn, it will be generally lighter weight. It's going to just like weight less. It's going to be more breezy. It's also going to take you a lot longer. If you use a thicker yarn, like the thicker you go, the faster you will go. So the faster you will be creating things, but the hotter it will start getting. So, and the more, like the heavier it will get. So it starts getting very heavy. So yeah, that's it. Also, if you use a thin yarn, like I did, you will be creating more rows to generally do it. Because like, for example, see, these are made with this, they're the same size. Let me just fold this in. They're the same size, but this yarn is way thicker than this one. So in this one, I have 4 rows, and this one I have 7 rows. And this is a thin, this is a thick one. So it affects like the general look. If you look at them, like the holes in this, they have more holes, but they're smaller. Here we have less holes, they're bigger. And also this one's much faster than this one. This one looks a little bit more dainty, in my opinion. I like to use thin yarn. So this is it about thickness. Hook. So yeah, usually when you buy your yarn, it will have a hook recommendation written down in your yarn packaging. That's usually the best one. Maybe you were a little bit of like a tension, like sometimes you just like are very tense, a tense crocheter, so your tension's really compact, or like maybe you're just a loose crocheter, and that affects a little bit as well. So I don't know, if you're able to, when you buy the yarn, consider buying like the hook that is advertised in the package, but like also a hook bigger and a hook smaller, so that you see like how it looks. I have a little bit of an example here, and I'll put it on screen. So like these 3 crochets, I did them with the exact same yarn, but I used, oh my god, my hair, I'm so sorry, that's gross. So I have the exact same yarn, but I have 3 different needles, and see how it changes. Like, it changes a lot. So the thinner, the more compact, the bigger, the more loose. And that's something that also affects weight. If you use like a thick yarn, like a thicker yarn with like a thinner hook, your stitches will be much more compact and it will be smaller. So like you're using more yarn in less space, so that will make it heavier. Whereas if you use a bigger hook with the, you know, the yarn that's like a little bit thinner than it should be for that hook or something like that, it will create more space in between the stitches, so it's going to be a little bit lighter weight. And you know, if you want to use like a very big hook with very tiny yarn, you can always do that. It's your creative liberation. You're free to do whatever you want. But that would be creating like bigger gaps and like a more flowy, open weave in general. So yeah, those are things that I feel like you should take into consideration. I like talking about this. I'm so sorry if that was boring, but I feel like it's nice. Like, for example, me, I wanted to use my pants to go to the beach or to go to a festival, places that are generally a little bit hot. I live in a hot country, so in general, I wanted mine to be as lightweight as possible. So I created my granny squares with a very thin yarn, like embroidery yarn, thin kind of situation, and my hook is a 1.75, so it's very thin. So that's why also it took me so long. If you want to make a heavier, more warm pants, you can use thicker yarn, baby acrylic, and use a thicker hook, and you will be finishing it way faster than I did. But you won't be able to wear it to the beach. Maybe you can, but it's going to feel hot. I love working with thin yarn, okay? I'm sorry. Okay, let's finally talk pattern. Woohoo! You might have come here just for this. I don't know. I feel like this video is quite informative, okay? So, the pattern. I actually had a little bit of a hard time understanding this pattern because, like, I know how to make pants, but I was just kind of not comprehending because we're just using squares. So it's a very non-curvy, very straight pants. So I even had to do like a little bit of a mock-up of like some fabric that I had laying around, some like mock-up fabric. And I did that to understand what's happening. So I will be telling you how to make the pattern for the pants so that you understand how to make pants. And then you can use like any sized square with this pattern. But then at the end of that explanation that I'm about to give, I will tell you how I did mine, and I'll just give you my pattern in case you don't want to go to the huffle and fussle and whatever the expression is to create your own pattern. By the way, in this portion of the pattern, I will be talking in centimeters. I don't understand inches. I don't know what they are. Like, after inches, there's like feet. Is it my feet? Is it anyone else's feet? Like, what are yards? Is it like a courtyard? Like a grass yard? Or is it like something else? I don't understand that. So I'm using centimeters. I will be putting like a basic conversion here on screen somewhere. there's always Google. You can go there and it's like centimeters to inches conversion, and it will give you the exact number that you need. I'm sorry, I don't understand inches, okay? I'm so sorry. Anyway, we are creating pajama pants. Yes, you're taking days and weeks to create pajama pants, but they're pretty pajama pants. Yay! So your hip measurement, the overall length that you need, so like from the hip or like the upper hip, like where you're from where the granny squares are beginning all the way to where you want them to stop in your body, that measurement. You might want your waist measurement. And yeah, let's create some patterns. So that let's talk pants. If you've never done pants, let me show you on screen how they look before they're all sewn together. They usually look like this and like this. To create pants, we have 4 general shapes. So 2 fronts, 2 backs. They have to be the opposites of each other. And then you will sew them in the side. So you will sew like a front side with the back side, the other front side with the other back side, and then you will sew the crotch. So it goes from the front all the way to the back, so the crotch. And then you'll do the inseam, which is like from one bottom inside to all the way to the other bottom in the other side. This is generally how you create like basic pants, and you'd have to put a waistband, you can put pockets, whatever. It's a general pants shape. So this is kind of what we're doing, but very, very geometric. So I will be putting here on screen somewhere the pattern for pants with like the general measurements. I'll just put that like thing on screen, the pattern on screen. And once you have that, so I create that on Illustrator. So I create a huge file on Illustrator, like 1.5 meters wide by 1.5 meters. And then I just make everything in scale, because that's just how I like to do things. If you don't have Illustrator or you just don't like to work like this, you can always just sketch this in a piece of paper. Use newspaper or like craft paper or like glue, bunch of like not glue but like tape, a bunch of pieces of printer paper together and draw this out. If you're drawing this out, you don't need to cut the paper. Don't cut it. Just have it, and don't cut it. Just don't cut around it. And then once you have this pattern, listen close. So this is the way that I found better to like visualize what's happening. I don't know if this is the best way to see this, the best way to communicate this. It's just how I found better. Instead of creating 4 different pieces, we're creating 2 leg pieces. And we're joining them by the crotch. It's weird. So you get the back and the front. I'm pointing to absolutely nothing. I even have like some pants here. You have the front. You get the front and the back, and you join them by the crotch. And if you do that, you will realize there's a huge gap in the middle that usually creates a little bit of shaping, a little bit of curve. We're not doing that because we're using squares. So pretend that doesn't exist, and then just fill this shape with squares. And there's your pattern. There you have it. 1 leg, and then you double it, do the exact same thing, and you have 2 legs. Unless you only have 1, then you just would do 1, and then the crotch. Anyway, so yeah, you just do this, and you fill everything, fill the whole space with the squares, the size of square that you. So you do a little square, you have it, you measure it, they usually will have the same measurement all around because it's a square, and then you just place it in your pattern. And this and you only need to do all of this if you want to use a specific granny square that you already have or that you already envisioned and it's bigger than mine. I know that mine, after I finished, I realized that my whole pants, like the squares are quite tiny. The ones that I saw in the internet are much bigger, so maybe you just want a different look, you want your squares bigger, and in that case you just like create your square, maybe they're bigger, and you just put them in and work with that. If they're too big, so if you put them side by side and there's one in the very end that's too big, you can either make all of your squares bigger and just eliminate that one, or make them all smaller and make it fit the pattern. To make it bigger or smaller, you can either change the tension. So maybe like, for example, these, I think like this is a square with a 3.5 hook, and this is a square with the same yarn but a 2.5 hook. So they look drastically different. They are the same yarn, the same pattern. They look the same, but this one is bigger, this one's smaller, and this is because I just changed the hook size. That being said, I think I already mentioned that if you use a tiny hook, a hook that's tinier than it should be for that yarn, it will weigh more, so it'll be heavier. You can put another rows, like for example these ones. This one I grew by just adding another row. And that's it. That's how you make it bigger or smaller in case you're working like that. If you want to just make a copy of my pants, here's it. Here's the pattern. I give it to you. 180 squares. I'm sorry about that. Let's talk about the crotch. So I did a crotch with 2 triangles. They're not really triangles. They're like a trapezoid. So they're like a triangle, but this bit is not a point. So I did this because I wanted to follow the pattern as closely as possible because I'm a perfectionist. And you only need to learn how to do this triangle, which is not that hard. It's almost the same thing as the square, but it's a half version of it. I have a full length tutorial on how to make the triangle and how to make this version of the triangle that doesn't have the full triangularness to it. It's a trapezoid, I think. I think it's what you would call it, a trapezoid. I don't know. In terms of color, just like color changing, the triangle that I used in the back, I will put it on screen. The extra layers, the extra rows that I put it on, I just made them all brown, and it didn't really affect because it's in the crotch, so it's not really that visible in terms of like changing the pattern, changing your wave, your colors, things like that. So I would just like use the general border color all a bunch of times like I did to do this one. And yeah, I would do this. It fits comfortably. It's very good. And you will learn how to make triangles if you use my video tutorial how to do that. Oh, before we start making all of the 180 squares, I just want to say, if you use this version that we're creating with the triangles, you have to create the exact opposite. So when you're doing the triangles, you will make like, where's my triangle? When you're doing your triangle, so you will create one with the fucked up, the like wrong edge here, and then you create another one that's the opposite. So another one like this, like one like this, and one like this, and the same for the back piece. And then when you're creating this, when you're creating the pattern, you will create an opposite version of it. It's like if you're doing just the squares, you can just create 2 of these. If you're using the triangles, you have to create 1, and then you create the exact opposite. You just change the position of these 2 the triangles, and that's it. I'm over explaining, I'm sorry. What is this video but an extreme over explanation? So yeah, if you want to use my pattern, just, and you're like, bestie, those are not my measurements, you just have to know what sized square you need. So you will just need to get your hip measurement, and or like the biggest measurement of like this area, this like torso area where the pants will be, so usually the bum area, and you will divide that by 12 because that is the amount of squares that we are using in that area. And once you have that, you will have the size of square that you need. And I already talked about like how to make the square bigger or smaller, and you will do that. Like you will achieve the square that you need for this pattern. Basically, like you go trial and error. Maybe you have square that's like 10 centimeters, but you need it to be 10 and a half. You can try to make it with a bigger needle, or you can put another roll on it. See how much you need. You just kind of get to the square that you need. Like for example, my hip is 102 centimeters. So divided by 12, it's 8.5. So that's exactly what I needed, my square. For example, your hip might be like, I don't know, 150 centimeters. If you divide that by 12, you would need a square that is 12.5. I don't have a 12 by 5 square here, but you would need a bigger square. Or if your waist is smaller than mine, say like 89 centimeters, I don't know, and you divide that by 12, it's a 7.5 centimeter crochet. So you would do that, and you just do that size of square, and you will do exactly this pattern, and it should work out fine. Just be sure that the amount that you have in the length is enough or too much. So like for example, my squares are 8.5 centimeters, and I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 squares down, and that is enough for my height. But you might be a little bit shorter than me, so you might need to take a whole roll out, or you might be taller and you might put a whole roll more to fit your size. That's kind of it. If you want to use this pattern, just make sure the square is the size that you need. Anyway, now you have your pattern. You know how many squares you need, 180 plus 4 triangles. And you just sit down and you crochet forever. And that's it. Sit down, crochet. Just one last thing. I talked about, mass producing, doing things in rolls. So like do all the centers, all the second colors, blah, blah, blah. This is also good if you're actually a beginner like I was, because when you first start, at least that happened for me when I first started, my crochet was very stiff. I used a lot of tension. I held my stitches very close to each other. So they came out tiny. The same needle, the same thread. I just had a lot of tension in my hands. I wasn't used to the whole doing a granny square crochet. And after a little while, once I got used to it, they started getting much bigger. If you look at them, they're the exact same. I did them with the same yarn, same crochet hook. They're massively different, and that makes a lot of difference when it comes to making the pattern, as we just said. So I do advise doing the center and then the second color, and then because once you start getting used to crocheting as you go, so you don't have like massively drastically different squares like I do. I hope that makes sense, because like even like if your tension's really stiff in the beginning, but all of your centers are stiff, and then you start loosening up as you grow the squares, they're going to grow together. They're all going to be the same, basically. And that's it. Okay, so now you know how many squares you need. You know what squares you want to do, hopefully, or you're deciding that now. And now you just need to sit down and fucking crochet, man. Just do it. Just sit down and crochet. Now, this is the part where you can kind of calculate how long you will take. This is the point where you're like, stop being delusional. Because for me, I wanted to make these in like 2 weeks, 3 weeks. And then I sat down, I learned how to crochet. I, picked up crocheting. I did the pattern. I figured out I would need 180 squares. I sat down, I crocheted one of these in its entirety. I calculated how long that took me. And I still did it. It took me an hour and a half to do one crochet square. One. And I knew I was going to do 180. Right now, my math is not working and my phone is filming this, so I don't know how much 180 times 1.5 is, but it's a lot. And I, being a beginner, I was like, I'm just going to get faster. I'm going to finish it. Like if I do it in terms, like if I do all the first ones and all the second ones, it will be faster for sure. Like I'll finish this very fast. Like I will be able to do this. I'll just get faster. And the thing is, it does get faster, but it's still crochet. It still takes a long time. And also joining the squares takes a long time. We're talking about that in a second. So this is the point where you calculate how long you will take based on how long you take to do one square, and how many squares you have to do. Take your time. No, calculate a little bit more than that. For me, it was 6-7 months. And I didn't do this obviously every day. Set a goal for a day. Like, do you want to do 2 squares a day? Do you want to do 5 squares a day? Do you want to do 10? Can you do that? Do you have time for that? I just want to say, if you're doing anything like crochet squares like mine, very tiny needle, very, very tiny yarn, have it in mind that you're going to wear these next year, because I took so long, and I didn't do them every single day, but I also have a very minimal social life. So there were weekends where all I was doing was crocheting for 10-12 hours straight. And also you cannot crochet for that much more than that. Don't go on and thinking that you're going to be crocheting for 16-20 hours a day and just slip for 4 hours and then go back to it. It's not gonna happen. Be realistic. Also, let's talk about entertainment, because why not? This video is gigantic. On the 6 months that I did this, I gathered some knowledge. So podcasts, audiobooks, YouTube commentary like essays are the best to listen to while crocheting. The best things, because you don't have to constantly be looking at the screen. That's important, because even though you get used to it and you get very mechanical on doing the crochet squares, you still kind of need to look at them at all times. So if you want to finish these fast, don't sit down to watch a movie or to catch up on a series that you really want to watch while doing these, because it will be long. You will take longer to crochet if you're doing this while you pay attention into a series that you really want to watch, versus if you want to you just sit down and listen to a podcast or listen to some music. But if you're just doing this, you just want to do it. It's your hobby. You're not really stressed. You don't want to care. You don't really care if you finish these fast. Do whatever. Also, yeah, I was crocheting everywhere. I was crocheting at the doctor's office. I was crocheting in the bus, especially in the beginning where I was taking the yarn and the crochet hook, but I didn't have to take the general squares because I was just doing the middle bits. When I was doing the middle bits, I just did them everywhere. I even once tried to crochet when I was stuck in traffic. Don't do that. Don't do that. That's a hazard. Don't do that. Safety hazard. Yeah, that's it on entertainment. I want to take a few minutes to talk about blocking. Now, if you're thinking this video is gigantic, I'm done with it, this is the part that you skip, because this is not that important. Maybe you're a perfectionist and you want to make your granny squares as perfect as they can be, and blocking will make a little bit of a difference, but it's not that necessary. I'm just informing you. I'm giving you the information. Okay, I'm giving you the information. You do with it what you will. Blocking is a technique that we usually use with yarn work, so knits, crochets, things like that, and essentially is making the pattern better. Because with crochet, the tension in our hands change. Like sometimes we're tired, sometimes we're not, sometimes we're hyper, sometimes we want to go fast. The tension will change, so the squares will look different. They will. We're humans. We're not machines. They will look different. So blocking is a technique where you will usually, there's different ways of blocking. There's a whole thing to it. But essentially, basically, in basic terms, you will wet or moist your fibers and you will let them dry in the exact position that they should be in. If you want to block, grab a little foam, a little something, grab some pins, just use any safety pin, any kind of pin that you use for sewing. I use these long pins that people use to stick bugs, but anyway, you will put a lot of pins very straight up in the exact measurement of your square, and then I got my squares wet, and then I put them on the pins and just let them there. Now usually people will not stack them up one over the other, but I did that because I didn't have that much space. It took them 4 days to dry, but it was cold. The weather was cold when I did that. I don't know, that was so hard to explain. If you don't want to block, which you might not want to, I didn't block mine. Something that you should do is just press your squares down. What I did was I did them from 10 to 10, so I did 10 crochet squares. I stacked them up very neatly on top of each other, and then I put something heavy. So I put a book or like my laptop on top of the stacked up pieces of crochet. And that should be enough, especially if you're doing these for yourself. There's going to be very neatly, this I feel like it's the least you can do because they will be like flat and it's easier to join. If you don't do that, they might be like a little bit wonky and it's a little bit annoying to join them together, but it's up to you. Also, you can iron it. Now, be careful. If you're using acrylic, do not iron. Do not iron. If you're using acrylic, do not iron because it will burn. It will ruin your iron. If you share your iron with someone, they will be very mad at you. Take it from someone who's experienced. So don't press the iron to your square if you're using acrylics. I use cotton, so I usually just iron everything. It's not the best recommendation. It's not what you should do. It's what I do. If you have acrylics or just generally just don't want to ruin your fibers, use the iron bit, the steam bit of the iron, steam it down. It does flatten a bit. I just put a heavy weight on top of mine, but these are things that you can do if you want to for a better looking pant. This is it ironed, so yeah, this is it pressed, and here we have the blocked version. Let me take it out. And that's a little bit on the finishing, a little bit on the perfectionism part of your pants, because I want you to make pants that you're gonna love and wear forever, because they take a lot of time. Okay, so let's finally build this thing. Once you have all of your squares, I would advise having like a piece of floor, a piece of space that you can just lay your squares down in the position that they will be sewn in and just leave it there. So maybe you have a little piece of your bedroom or like a living room, somewhere that you can position your squares and just leave them there, because it does take a while to join the squares. I mean, it took for me because I did use a very thin needle, but usually something that takes a little while. So if you're able to just leave them there in that position, that would be great. So you just put the squares in the position that we talked about in the pattern making bit of the video, and you join them together. How do you join them together? By sewing with your hands, with a tapestry needle or a normal needle, depending on the thickness of your yarn, or you use a crochet hook. There are a few different ways of joining granny square crochets. Did I scream? I'm so sorry. For these pants, I used a technique that's called whip stitch on the back loop. So I would fold the squares right sides together, and I would, with my needle, I use a very thin needle because of my yarn, but you can use a tapestry needle, is usually what you use. I fold them together, and with the tapestry needle, or like the needle, I would do a whip stitch. So I would go through the stitches on the both squares, only on the back stitch, so the stitches that are not touching each other when you fold them together. And then when I got to the end of one of a joint squares, I would just fold all the two squares, and I would just continue sewing them. I worked on 2s and 4s and 6s. So like I joined 2s and 2, and then I made them into 4, or like I joined them 2s, and then make them into 6s, and then other 6s, and other 6s, and then other 6s, and then I joined them all together. But you just have to join them all. And also, I just like to take a little second and talk about posture. I'm probably showing like a little bit of a pretty little time lapse in which I'm just like bending down like this. Don't do that. I did that because I was like in that setting. Preferably have a little bit of a back support. There are a few ways in which you can sit down to crochet. You can have like a chair with no armrest, but you can like rest your arms on the table, and crochet like that with your arms resting in the table. You can also, crochet just against the wall, but like with your arms loose, and then you're going to get tired, and you're going to have to like rest your hands like this, and then go back and then rest your hands like this. Also, you can have, just if you have laying around, a little bit of a table that you just set up in random places, and then you can sit in your bed against the wall or like the headrest. Put your little table here, and then just crochet with your little iPad in the little gap that exists for the iPad. And that was the best position to crochet in, the most comfortable. I absolutely loved crocheting like that. Absolutely loved it. Also, you can get the same desk, put it on top of another desk, and use it as a standing desk and crochet standing up. That's what I did for when I filmed the tutorials, but you get tired very soon. Also, I think a good and also very good posture tip is to have a chair with armrests. Those granny chairs, the ones that rock, they are good. Like, I don't know the age range of people watching me because it's a very new channel, but if you're on the younger side and you look at those and you're like, once you start crocheting, you understand. They're very good. You just sit down, you rock a little bit, you have armrests so that your arms are not like hanging loose. I don't know. It's very good. It's very good. It's very good. And yeah, that's it. I was going to put a little like, don't crochet laying down in your bed upside down because the blood will rush to your head or something like that. But this video is very long and I'm not funny. That would be like a comedic break. I'm not funny, so it was a waste of time. I'm sorry. Back to building your pants. We're almost done. So once you have your 2 panels, remember, if you're using a triangle version, the version with the crotch made out of 2 triangles, you have to have them opposite to each other because there is a right side and a wrong side. So be aware of that. You will build your pants. Remember I told you how to build pants? Let's do this here. So I have a visual help, but if I will try to explain that with my words. Let me just drink a little bit of water. Grab your 2 pants. Put them right sides together. They should be exactly the same. Remember, if you're using the triangles, they have to be exactly the same. So like little triangle with little triangle, big triangle with big triangle, right sides together. And then you sew the crotch. So they look exactly the same. They're on top of each other. Sew the crotch with the same stitch that you've been doing. Same stitch. I have a video on different stitches. That's coming up in a few days. If you're following this as a tutorial, I don't think you would have gotten to the point of like needing that before I post it. But if you have, there are lots of videos on the internet on how to join granny square crochets if you don't like the way that I joined them. But I have a video on that as well coming up. Once you finish that stitch, now this is a little complicated. It's not complicated, it's just, I don't know, it's annoying. So they're facing right sides together. What you will do, you will turn them around so that they're facing wrong sides together, and you can see the right sides. So like you're seeing at the perfect stitch of the crotch, you're looking at the right side of the fabric, so they're facing wrong sides together and they already are stitched on the crotch. Now you will fold each piece on itself. So basically front with back in one side, front and back with the other side. So you'll be folding them and you can already see pants. And they should be, so like the pants themselves, they're going to be right sides together. So like they were wrong sides together because they were a leg against a leg. And now that you're folding, you're folding the front with the back and the front with the back, they should be right sides together. I'm glad I filmed this so that you can see and you don't need to use just my voice if you're using this as a tutorial, which is what it's intended to be. And once you do that, you just sew the sides and you have pants. Now that you have pants, you can try them on and you will realize that it falls from your hips, probably. That's because we use the biggest size, like we use our hip size to make the pants, because they're not, we didn't make them with curves, and our body usually has curves. So you need to do a waistband. Yay! I will tell you 2 different ways to do them. The waistbands, so to do the waistband. First way is the most simpler way. You will, you have your pants. It's all done, all fine and dandy. You will go around the top part with single crochet or double crochet. Just do double crochet or single crochet all around it, and then once you get to the end, you go up, and then you just continue going up and around, up and around. And once you get to the end of the length that you want of the waistband, you just stop, you pull the yarn through, you cut it and stop there. And I'll just explain the other way, the way that I did it, and then we're catching up. So you can do that, or you can do like a double-sided waistband that basically goes around. It's how like a waistband usually looks like. So basically, you do the same thing. You do the double crochets all the way to the size that you want it to be, and then you double that. So in my when I did it, I did one single crochet just to kind of set the scene, and then I did 10 double crochets. Yeah, but if you're doing the double version, one you get to, so half of the first half. I did 2 little holes in the very front of the pants. So I held the pants to the front, so like in the front side, and when I got to the middle, I did 2 holes by skipping 1 stitch using a chain stitch. So I did the double crochet, I did 1 chain stitch, and I skipped 1 stitch, and then I just did it. I just continue doing everything the same, but skipping 1. You can tell I'm very good at explaining crochet. And I just did that, did the 2 holes, and then I finished the 10 rows, and then I went and I folded it, and I did a chain, I think it's a slip stitch all the way around just to hold that waistband folded like that. So I just went around with those slip stitch, I think it's a slip stitch, all the way around, and then I'm done. Now you do a little string. I did a string with a method called a I-cord, but not really. It's a different kind of I-cord. I will link the video that I followed, but I will have on screen what I did. But like I used, so like because my yarn is so thin, I used 3 strands of yarn to be 1 yarn, and then I did this folding over the needle thing situation, and I will link the video that I used down below because that is hard for me to explain, and if you might not be able to understand what I'm doing because I'm not that good crocheter. So I'll link the video down below. I did that I-cord. I did it very long. You have to make it bigger than your waist because you have to be able to do a little tying situation, little knot lace situation. If you don't want to make that, if you don't want to make that cord, you can use a ribbon, you can use a shoelace, you can buy a cord, anything. Just don't use 1 single strand of the yarn that you've been using because that's not going to hold up because these pants are a little bit heavy. So get a little bit of a cord and then you string it through. So yeah, if you use the first version of the waistband and you stopped in the top, you will put the ribbon in by weaving in through the waistband, so all the way around, and then you can see the string around the waistband, and then when you end it, you pull it and you do a little lace, and that's it. And if you, like me, you did the version of the waistband where you fold around, you will pull the string, the cord, pull it through the waistband inside, through those 2 little holes that we left in the middle, and you pull it through. I did it with a safety pin, put a safety pin on, fold it all the way around, pull it over, and that's it. And then you put it on, and then you judge it around. You will have a little bit of a ruffled waistband situation. We're done. This is it. Success. I'm so happy. I actually have to refilm a little bit that I forgot to say, so I still have to say something to the camera, but for you, I'm pretty much done. I'm done. I'm doing a little lookbook. Let's do a little lookbook. tell me, let me know if you watched all of this. I'd actually love to know. I don't know if you noticed, I don't know if you're watching this when I post it, but I'm a very, very new channel on YouTube. So if you can, consider subscribing to this channel, because of this video, because it took me so long. Let me know in the comments down below if you like this video, if there's anything that you didn't quite like about it. Let me know. I need constructive criticism. If no one likes to listen, it's important. Let me know if you're doing the pants, if this was useful to you, or if you just watched this because you felt like it, you want to know how it's done, but you don't really plan on doing it. Let me know. Yeah, if there's any specific thing that you have any doubts, let me know. Comment down below. I will try my best. I mean, I will comment. I will respond to everyone because it's a new channel. Don't forget to like and subscribe to this YouTube channel. I will leave my social media here on the side if you want to follow. I will be posting a lot of nice pictures with this pants in my Instagram and on my Pinterest. There is a video on these little crop top that I will be posting in the next few days, maybe next week. Yeah, this was it. I hope this video was useful or entertaining or anything like that. I hope you liked it. That was it. Bye bye. I see you in the next few days with a joining square tutorial, or a little bit after in the shirt little crop top situation tutorial. See you hopefully